Now this is cool. Dr. Greenhouse, Dr.
Yes.
Nadia Sabeh, thanks for joining me. I want to ask one quick question. Can you, in a nutshell, describe what California is doing with these new greenhouse energy regulations?
Well, in a nutshell, they're regulating controlled environment agriculture or controlled environment horticulture, as they like to use the terminology here in California, is being regulated. The energy use and energy efficiency is finally coming to the agriculture sector, the controlled environment agriculture sector specifically. It has been, uh, what's
Well,
the
when did
word?
this take effect, first of all?
Yeah, sure. So it went into effect January 1st of 2023. It's part of the 2022 energy code or building code cycle here in California.
So it's something they've been
There,
working on for a while then, right?
yeah, I mean, it was several years in the making, and they had hired some consultants to hold stakeholder meetings, to do some analyses to determine what the availability of certain technologies were, what sort of the economic impact would be in terms of, product sales and impact on the industry at large in terms of, would any of the regulations deleteriously affect what controlled environment agriculture growers were producing? And they really wanted to hear from the industry stakeholders to find out, how feasible and practical are some of these measures that we're proposing. And 3 or 4 years ago, when they first started this process, there's maybe a laundry list of maybe 10 or 15 items that they were considering to include in the new energy code for 2022. And over time, and based on stakeholder feedback, based on availability of technology, based on just costs, they whittled it down to about 10. And I say 10, but it's really like 5 for indoor facilities and 5 for greenhouse facilities.
All right.
Um,
The most important one, at least when you talked about it in front of us at the NGMA a couple weeks ago, was the glazing for
yeah.
greenhouses, new greenhouses.
Yeah, we knew this
Specifically,
one was going to be impactful.
specifically, no new glass greenhouse unless it's got more than one layer of glass. Am I correct?
Everything has to have more than one layer of any material, basically, is what California is mandating now. So whether you're glass or acrylic or poly film, you have to have 2 or more layers separated by an air barrier. And glass is expensive. Single pane glass is really expensive, right? It's
It's
5 times the cost of plastic. Um, and the I think what people outside of the industry don't understand is that we're not trying to prevent light from coming in and heat from coming in. We're trying to purposely transmit light in to these buildings, and by having multiple layers of glazing, we reduce the amount of transmissivity uh, to the crop that we're growing. And although glass is more transparent than any of the plastics or other materials that are out there, every extra layer that you add compounds how much reduction there is in transmissivity. And you could say the same for how much, solar heat gain comes in, or how much heat could be lost in the winter. But quite honestly, California is a very temperate climate. We were just talking about that right ahead of this conversation, and we don't really have extremely cold climate, which is where an insulated glazing would come in really
right.
handy.
Yeah, I would think that it would be
Yeah.
about conserving heat energy within the greenhouse and preventing it from leaving. not preventing the heat from going inside the greenhouse and, heating it up and, removing your air conditioning, so to speak, like you might do with
Yeah.
a house. So double poly is okay, new
Double
construction.
poly is okay.
Twin wall polycarbonate, which is a standard
Okay.
glazing, that's
Yep.
okay. I've never seen a double layer glass greenhouse, not even in an institution, a university. Maybe they've got some, but it's
Yeah.
it's not, it can't be done for a commercial vegetable or flower greenhouse. But we put in a curtain, an energy curtain
Yeah.
instead, right?
Yeah.
So the state
Exactly.
knows, oh, put up single glass and an energy curtain and you're fine, right?
Exactly.
But
Exactly. And
but
that I,
but they
but
say no to that, right?
well, they say no to that for now. And what their stance is, what the Energy Commission stance is that they want they want energy efficiency measures that can be built into the infrastructure. That they don't, right, that they can look at the design and they can say, okay, this structure is made of double glass. And so, they're not going to swap out double glass for single glass once it's built, right? It's going to be built into the structure of this greenhouse. And that's what we want. Anything that is a major capital investment, they're trying to capture. When we start talking about thermal energy screens or shade screens, or even coatings, those rely on the indoor grower or greenhouse grower to utilize those systems, right? To open and close those systems. It's yes, it's built in, right? Because we're saying, oh, we're putting in, the shading system, and we have the shades and we have the wires and the motors and the automation to open and close them, but there's nothing that really forces them to do it. And that's what these mandated requirements are doing, is forcing a grower to implement an energy efficiency measure. And if we have to rely on the user to implement it, during operation, then there's no guarantee that there's going to be a savings. That's what they're looking for, right? A guarantee. It's
Right.
built in. There's going to be savings. But like so many folks at the NGMA discussed, so many of the members that were there, is that you can get so much more savings by using thermal energy screens and shade screens, to trap the heat in, or block the heat from coming in the first place, than using, twin wall anything, right? Using double layer anything. And it also gives growers the flexibility to manage that system and operate it in an efficient manner. I think, you know, the the Energy Commission comes from this place that, because this industry hasn't been regulated, that they're just going to use as much energy as they want to. And maybe there's a subsector of that. I will agree with that in certain circles. But when we're talking about vegetable producers and flower producers and nursery producers, we're talking about pennies on the margin, right? I mean, we are not talking about this major cash crop that we can, sell for thousands and thousands of dollars a pound, or even hundreds and hundreds of
That
dollars a pound.
implies that this was all prompted by the cannabis industry, I'm guessing.
I mean, I think the cannabis industry put a spotlight on CEA. I think that's the bottom line, is that all of a sudden people realize, oh, there's these greenhouses, right? And there's these indoor farms, and these indoor farms are using a lot of electricity for lights and for air conditioning and everything. And then they said, oh, well, what about these greenhouses? We've never regulated a greenhouse for energy before. Yes, we have a regulation for structure so it doesn't fall down in a windstorm, right? But we're not, we've never regulated it for how they're using energy. And so, although, yes, I think cannabis put a spotlight on it, um, also, this is a sector that wasn't regulated before. And in California, we have these decarbonization goals that we're trying to achieve. And so every sector, right, whether it's cars or homes or office buildings or hospitals or data centers, are all under this sort of scrutiny, or under this desire to reduce the demand on our energy grid, reduce the demand on natural gas, and reduce the carbon footprint overall of the state's operations, right?
Mhm.
And so agriculture, there's agriculture doesn't use a lot of energy, right? I mean, just in general, if we're talking about field agriculture, maybe there's some pumps, there's trucks and cars and driving around, and right, they are regulating the trucks and they are regulating the semis, and and the transportation, and even grocery stores, and how they have cold, their refrigerated storage and everything. But when it comes to control environment agriculture, all of a sudden now we have this other sort of building sector that has gotten a pass until now. And so California is looking, and it feels like controlled environment agriculture is being unfairly um uh
Targeted or singled out
targeted.
right
That's
now.
the
Yeah.
right word.
Yeah.
But really, you know, California is looking at, well, what fruit is left to pick, right?
Right.
And
No
that's
pun intended. So,
exactly, no pun intended. And so I think it was just a matter of time. And
right, right.
cannabis might have just hastened, right? It might have just like, oh, this is one that we can tackle right now. We know it's using a lot of energy. Let's go for it now, as opposed to maybe one or two more cycles into the future. It was now.
Okay. So if you're
Um,
operating in California, you know the state's history, especially recently on regulation. You almost had to expect this coming. But
oh
I
yeah,
don't know a single grower anywhere in the world who, if you went to them and said, I can help you reduce your energy costs, they wouldn't say, show me, tell me, what do I need?
exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
So we can view this as maybe a good thing from that standpoint.
I mean, I think this is a real big opportunity for greenhouse growers or any indoor growers out there, to have a conversation, to bring them to their farms, right? And say, hey, this is how we're operating. This is what works for us, and to throw their hat in the ring, right? That's what I'm really hoping for. And speaking to groups like the NGMA, is let's provide this feedback, and let's provide solution oriented feedback. What is working, right? What are growers already implementing that is saving them money, and saving energy, because they only make 3 cents on the dollar for the head of lettuce that they sell,
In other words,
right? I mean,
don't hide from the regulators and hope they don't notice. Get out in
educate
front
them.
of them and say, help, this
That's
is what's
exactly right.
working. Here's what we recommend. Now, a couple of other things
Exactly.
real quick, because I know I've interrupted your going for a walk this afternoon.
No,
I'm sorry
it's all
about
good.
that. Because it's beautiful but hot in
I
California
have to
where you
go
are.
soon because it's going to be too hot. It's already going to be 90 degrees
Yeah.
today. So,
There were a couple of other elements to the regulations, the new rules. One of which is you have to use certified, efficient equipment, pumps, fans, motors, etc.
yeah.
You say that's not an issue because if you're installing a professional, commercial, anything when it comes to your HVAC in your greenhouse, you're already doing that, right? So
I'm so glad you
that's not a
listened
big
to
deal.
what I said.
Did I get that right?
You did a really great job. Yeah, I mean, look, all they're saying is, if you're going to install a boiler, if you're going to install a chiller, if you're going to install, a pump, it has to meet certain efficiency standards that are already in the code for those equipment, for the certain size of that equipment. And I want to be clear that these regulations are for new construction only.
Same
Okay,
with the
so if you,
glazing. Don't worry, you don't
yeah,
have
if
to
you,
tear off your
you don't
single
have to
layer of
tear off your
glass or yeah,
glazing exactly and
yeah.
replace it with double. If you do replace your existing glazing, because let's face it, if you're doing plastic, you are going to be replacing it. I think there's some question, right? Is this a major retrofit and you have to change it with double? I'm going to guess the answer is no, because I think enough people are going to come forward to say this greenhouse was not built with the bones to support a double glazing, right? And so I'd have to tear down my entire greenhouse and start over. So I think we're going to be able to make some arguments that you can just stick with what you already had if you replace your glazing in the future. But and so if you already have an existing nursery and you have a boiler that's 40 years old, they're not going to make you rip that out and install a more efficient one. But I'm going to guess that if you do rip it out because it's, it keeps breaking down and you're just sick of repairing it every 2 weeks and you replace it with something new, you're not going to even be able to buy that same inefficient boiler that you could 40 years ago. You're going to be forced to buy a boiler that, your boiler rep sells, and they're only going to sell something that complies with the energy code.
Right, right.
So to me, this is a non-issue unless you are buying from maybe outside of the United States, right? And they might have different energy regulations. And so then you might not meet the code.
The
So
reason
you
you
just
should
want to make
support the
sure if you're buying,
NGMA.
yeah, exactly. So I
Okay,
think this is a non-issue. I think this is just setting a standard that is, you know, we're all complying with
sure.
anyway.
Okay, it also impacts supplemental lighting,
Yeah,
but also in a way that doesn't really change what growers are already doing. We won't get into the numbers, the
yeah.
energy efficiency numbers, but the vast majority of HPS lights still meet those
They
new
still
standards,
meet the
right?
requirements. Yeah, I
And
think
LEDs
any,
certainly do. So you don't have to, you're not going to have to retrofit old HPS
exactly.
for new LEDs. Okay.
Exactly. And yeah, any HID lighting, metal halide, high pressure sodium, even, fluorescent lamps, all of that is still going to be able to comply with the efficiency. And, I think in that case, they listened to people who were saying, hey, I actually might get some benefits from high pressure sodium lamps in terms of reducing my demands on my boiler because I'm getting heat and light from these high pressure sodium lamps. And
Mhm.
so they backed off the requirements for greenhouses, but they are eyeing it for the next cycle to increase the efficiency requirement. And I know a lot of growers are concerned if they had to do a replacement with an LED light that, I've heard anywhere from 12 to 19-year payback, which by then they're going to be replacing that lamp. So there is no payback, honestly.
Right. Of course, if you're doing
But
high dollar crops like vegetables or plugs, young plants, I think the payback's a lot quicker than that.
it should
But
be better.
regardless,
Yeah.
isn't there also the indoor folks, and we're not going to get into that, they have requirements about tracking their electrical use, or that's coming. Is that
It's
correct?
coming. Yeah. So what they are requiring indoor growers to do is to basically aggregate all the power that is being used for lighting into a single panel. So, or not a single panel, but a
Single
separate
circuit, separate
independent
circuit.
circuit
Yeah.
of panels so that they can, and then let me just say, and then everything else can be on a different circuit, right? And so I think there's two reasons behind this aggregation or sort of division of how we're circuiting our power. One is that they want to set us up for metering, for sub metering. We're seeing this in a lot of different building sectors where they want to know, how much energy and power do the lights use compared to the HVAC system or the pumps or the offices, right? And so it makes it easier to say, oh, yes, this is really how much power these lights are using. I think there's
And maybe
also
eventually be billed for that separately.
possibly,
Hey, you want
I
to light
mean,
a crop? Oh,
maybe,
that costs
right.
twice as much as anything else you do.
Right, right. I mean, I would be more interested in the HVAC side because I'll be honest, I mean, I think lighting is easy. I mean, you say how off, how much was it on and what is the, the power per lamp or bulb or whatever, how many bulbs do you have? And, I mean, there's your watts. I mean, that's pretty
You're a
simple
PhD.
math.
You could calculate that without the
But
separate
HVAC, oh
circuit.
my God, it's like, especially if you have, modulating systems and multiple fans and compressors, like, I don't know if four compressors were on or one compressor was on at half speed. Like, I don't know. Um,
All right. Last
yeah,
question.
so, but
Go
I
ahead. Go
think
ahead.
the other issue, or maybe a concern that indoor growers have, and I get it, is that if they aggregate lighting, what might be coming and what might be in the back of some utilities' mind is, um, in those cases where we have the threat of a brownout or a blackout, right? Then they might force or request indoor growers to back off their lighting. And and reduce the amount of power that they
Mm.
deliver to that building, to run those lights, to save on grid energy, when there's a really high peak
Ah.
demand. I don't know if this is a conspiracy theory or if this could be true, but I do get that concern. But what I would say, even to that concern, is, you know, yes, it's going to reduce your rate of production. Yes, that is going to slow down the growth of your crops. But there's other things we can do, right? I mean, we can shift photo periods if you're an indoor facility. It will reduce overall how much energy you're using for the HVAC system and for irrigation. And if there is an energy savings, cost savings benefit to working with the utility and working with them in this effort, then that might be a way to gain a few pennies on that dollar with the
Yeah,
products that you're
an indoor
selling.
grower could light from midnight till noon the next day, and the plants don't know the difference. They don't have
Yeah,
to run in
exactly.
daylight
I mean,
hours.
your growers, your staff knows the difference, and I think that's one of the harder pieces.
True.
But your plants don't. You're
Yeah.
right.
I guess
Yeah.
that's why we should think about what our mutual friend Jim Reardon says. It depends on that big light bulb in the sky.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, last question. Then you can
Sure.
go for then you can go for your walk. And I think my right hand man, Paul Black, needs me. He just stuck his head in my office as you saw. What about the other 49 states?
Mm.
Is there risk that they're looking at California going, oh, no more glass greenhouses without multiple layers? Yeah, that sounds like a thing.
Yeah.
Or because I know all of my readers from around the rest of the country are thinking, well, California is just crazy anyway. Is there any risk that what California is doing is going to come their way?
Always, as California goes, so goes the nation. Sorry, guys.
Ooh, clarify that a little bit. Be serious now.
Well, look, is it a risk or is it an opportunity, right? I mean, it's kind of both. And I think that, if we just talked about glazing, I would make the argument in California that glass houses don't really have a place here that much. I mean, glass houses work great in cold environments, where we want to trap heat that that came in as light and now bounces around and now is long wave radiation, and glass is opaque to that and traps the heat and creates that greenhouse effect. We want that in a cold environment, and a cold sunny environment. In California, we don't have a lot of cold sunny environments, and so, okay, yeah, we can't have double glass in California, but I'm a greenhouse engineer. I don't care. I'm not specifying glass in California anyway. So, okay, fine. Double poly, yes, every day, all day. That is what I'm going to specify in California. If I go to Michigan, if I go to Montana, right, where it's sunny but cold, double pane glass, is that the end of the world? Maybe that's actually a good thing. Or maybe you can make an argument that you want single pane glass because you are trying to bring in as much light as possible, because that's going to actually help heat up the greenhouse more. People don't understand the greenhouse effect. We talk about the greenhouse effect when we talk about climate change and global warming, but it all comes from the greenhouse and using glass to trap sunlight inside. And so if we can actually let more light transmit through that glass, we can actually heat the greenhouse more. So it's counterintuitive to everybody who is not a greenhouse grower or a greenhouse engineer, but that's exactly what we're trying to do. We need numbers behind our positions, though. We need data behind the positions. So, is it a risk, right, that we're going to require double glazing in every other state? Well, I mean, if you think it's a risk because it's going to reduce your bottom line, then it is. But then demonstrate why, right? Show the data, of how that extra cost of double glazing is going to reduce your production rate, reduce how much product you can sell or what your harvest cycles are, and that it is going to, make your business insolvent, right? Share that data. That is what they're looking for and what they need. We need to educate each other, and we need to educate, the regulators and the people who are, outside of the businesses that we practice. The other thing is that every state, multiple states are currently regulating energy use in some fashion. Depending on what state you're in, they might be saying you have to use this type of HVAC system, or you can only put in this many watts per square foot of lighting, or something, or you can't use natural gas anymore. You can only use electricity and heat pumps. Uh, and those exist or are being proposed. And so I just want to encourage anyone who's listening, anyone who's involved in the greenhouse industry, whether you're a manufacturer and supplier, or you're a grower, or you're a researcher and academic, to reach out to your state regulators, reach out to the Energy Commission, reach out to your farm bureaus, and the other societies and organizations that you guys all belong to, and work together to invite them to your facility, invite them to eat the food that you're growing, and demonstrate that you are producing a value for their economy and for their local, state, regional,
Yeah,
businesses.
yeah. No, I think that is absolutely key to where we are right now is
Yeah,
be proactive.
yeah,
And we need to work with the National Greenhouse Manufacturers Association, state associations, national associations like American Hort, the big state associations.
yeah,
Certainly, your alma mater, University of
yeah.
Arizona's Controlled Environment Agriculture Center, can provide a lot of the information we need. And people like you, Dr. Greenhouse, Nadia Sabeh, thanks so much for
Yeah.
educating us about what's going on in California.
Yeah. Well, thank you for inviting me to have this conversation. And if anyone has any questions about what is happening in California and want more details, you can contact us. You can go to our website, drgreenhouse.com. We
That's easy.
have a lot of I published a blog a couple of months ago that has that table that I presented to NGMA that kind of breaks down what the energy code sections are related to controlled environment agriculture. So check that out. And if you have any questions, if you want us to get involved, we are happy to do that as well. One of the projects we did here in California is we went to growers in the state and asked for data, and they shared that with us, and we determined how much energy they were using on a monthly annual basis. And I will tell you that it's a lot less than what some of those research models are reporting and estimating. So if those models are predicting that we are using more energy than growers actually are, that's the information that these regulators are relying on, because that's what's being published.
That's why we can't be
So
afraid to share,
don't be
this
afraid to share,
details. Yeah.
because they're going to come after you, whether you're involved or not. So get involved, share your data. If you want help analyzing that data, we're here to help you do that. And then if you want help, facilitating conversations with your regulators, utilities, etc., we can do that too.
Yeah, give a little pitch. I mean, I've taken up your time. I owe you the opportunity to tell us a little bit about what your business, Dr. Greenhouse, that's the name of the business, right?
That
Dr.
is the name of the
Greenhouse?
business. Yeah, it
And you got
started
8
as a
employees
nickname.
there, so it's not you at that desk. There's a lot of people. Tell us
There
what
are,
you do real
yeah.
quickly. Yeah.
I mean, we're a mechanical and agricultural engineering firm. We have 8 people here. Most of them are in the office with me here today, and we specialize in climate management and controls for indoor agriculture, controlled environment agriculture, and greenhouses. And we really are trying to make every project successful. When it comes to climate management and heating, ventilation, air conditioning, um, it's a complex system. It's easy to understand lights. Growers like playing with nutrient mixes and solutions and fertilizers. But when it comes to managing the temperature and humidity and vapor pressure deficit and CO2 and balancing and optimizing all of that, it gets really complex very quickly. And so we're here to help growers optimize all of those variables, figure out what is the best system, how to operate their system, to to be really successful and grow really healthy and productive crops and save energy and water in the process. So yeah, we're in California, but we've done work in 32 states and 6 Canadian provinces. We're all over the place. We've worked in every climate zone.
Very cool. Very
Yeah.
cool. Dr. Greenhouse, drgreenhouse.com. You can find out more. Thanks
Awesome.
again for the time, and keep us up to date on what other craziness comes out of the state of California. Thanks, Doctor.
We will. And by the way, the next stakeholder meeting in California is May 16th.
May
So
16th.
yeah, so again, you can find it, California Case Stakeholder Meeting. You can search for Controlled Environment Horticulture and sign up. We want to hear from all of you. I think the next meeting is going to be focused on lighting. So if you are very passionate and concerned about what the lighting regulations are going to be and how they're going to change in the next code cycle, please participate. Please join that meeting.
And as a PS, you mentioned at the beginning, they don't call it controlled environment agriculture. That's because CEA was already taken.
It was. CEA is the California Energy Alliance, which, actually does a lot of good policy work. So you might want to get involved in that too. But
so out there at
CEH is how they do.
Controlled environment horticulture, which
yeah.
means the same thing, agriculture.
It does. And actually, might actually be a really good term to describe what this industry is. So
it's better than CEH is better than MEH. Meh. And on that note, thanks, Dr. Greenhouse.
Thanks, Chris. It was really nice talking to you.